Meeting come to order. Clerk call the roll.
Mayor Manning.
Present.
Councilman Petroselli.
Present.
Councilman McGrady.
Present.
Clerk, please read minutes from our last meeting.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we move to dispense the minutes of the last meeting.
I second that.
Accepting them as is. Call the roll.
Councilman Petroselli.
In favor.
Councilman McGrady.
In favor.
Mayor Manning.
In favor. Reports from officers and committees.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we move on to our third of 7 departmental year in review recaps. Tonight we will have a presentation from Police Chief Spain in regards to the Police Department's 2018 operations. Chief Spain?
Thank you, Terry. So this is the second year that we've kind of gone into this activity and these presentations. It's kind of a high-level overview. It really has to do with more numbers than dollars and cents. And we'll start with our calls for service. We started out January 2018 with a bang with 2,200 calls for service for that month. And then we tended to kind of even things out a little bit. Right now we answer about 1,800 calls for service per month in the city of Watervliet, which is pretty impressive when you figure that we're only a city that's 1.3 square miles, but there's 10,000 people in that city. So our dense population probably has a lot to do with that. The daily call volume is about, give or take, about 60 calls throughout the 2018 service year. As far as uniform traffic tickets, and this isn't parking tickets, this is just UTTs, moving violations, about 4,600 tickets were generated from the police department in 2018, which is, I think, from my experience with the police department, a phenomenal number. We were just about 5,000 last year, about 4,600 this year, and these numbers actually reflect our current staffing, or our staffing at the time, which we were down 3 or 4 members throughout the duration of 2018. So having that in mind, these numbers are pretty remarkable as far as the staffing that we had available. We average about 385 tickets a month, and that's around 13 tickets a day issued. The next is our arrests. The arrests stayed pretty even until October. We had a little peak in October, but we average about 71 arrests a month, which equals about 6 daily, but 855 arrests over the course of the year. When I was a patrolman a few years ago, we hit 1,000, I think 2 years in a row. And again, a pretty remarkable number when you figure 1,000 is 10% of our population. But obviously we arrest the same people twice sometimes, so those numbers kind of fluctuate a little bit. So one of the things that I'm proudest of this department is that we don't rest on our laurels here. We constantly train. We have several certifications that we train during the year, and I'll give you an idea of what they are. IDC certification is the first one up there, and that allows our officers to go out and train not only our staff, but other officers through the Zone 5 Academy or different venues like that. We actually have an officer, Chris Tolman, who's very knowledgeable in the outlaw motorcycle gang, and actually has been the featured presenter at Siena College with hundreds of people there. And Chris has actually received his master instructor certification last year. But we also have the day-to-day stuff, the BAO research, which allows our officers to do DWIs and process DWIs, radar certification, and now LIDAR. The difference between radar and LIDAR is everybody has a radar detector, but nobody has a LIDAR detector. There's no such thing. So if you're in your car and we're shooting you with LIDAR, you'll never know it. So radar and LIDAR go hand in hand. And obviously that's a traffic safety issue for us, that we have the ability to go out there and monitor the speeds, not only in the city of Watervliet within our boundaries, but we can also go on 787, which is obviously part of our territory, our jurisdiction as well. We have to routinely be recertified on our taser, and our taser instructor has to be recertified every year as well. So that's part of our certifications. One thing that we really took a big leap on last year was our active shooter. We actually utilized the high school during the week last year when they were on break, and we actually did a whole department active shooter scenario. We split the department in half, so 12 guys went in the morning, 12 guys went in the afternoon, and we actually did 4 scenarios for each group that everybody took an active role in. And it was really the first time we've ever did it, but our guys did it so professionally and it was so productive that we're looking to do this every year now. And to have every member of your department trained in an aspect like this is huge for us. And to be able to train in a facility that's inside our boundaries where we might have to go someday, that's just a huge benefit for us. What we also did was we sent every member of our department to active shooter training as well as doing our own scenario. So we weren't satisfied just the fact that we were training. We wanted to go somewhere else to make sure that we were at an optimal level to continue this moving forward. So we have other safety training that's involved in here as well. But I think the most impressive thing is that we trained for 1,050 hours in 2018. Now 1,050 hours doesn't seem like a lot, but it's 131 work days. It's 26 work weeks, and it's almost half a year of training. Now that would be for one individual, but that's the amount of time that we spent to be better at our job through the course of the year. Now, one of the bonuses that we have is that it doesn't always cost us overtime. We have an agreement with the PBA that when we do trainings like this, that officers will take comp time, which is time off, rather than be paid overtime, which saves the department a lot of money moving forward. So it's going hand in hand, a lot of cooperation between the PBA and the administration, and all to make us better as a department. So I wanted to go through some of the notables, the arrests that we had during the year. And for the 2 people in the audience that were here for my budget presentation, I apologize because this is going to be a repeat. But for everybody else, it'll be new information. So this is an individual that lived on the 2100 block of 4th Avenue. And we had an idea that he was doing something in the household with a young girl. And we continued the investigation. And we actually had a great relationship with the New York State Parole, who helped us in this investigation, to the extent where we had enough information on this guy to get him violated, and he was sent to Albany County Jail awaiting a parole hearing. While he was in Albany County Jail, we actually got to listen into his phone calls to his victim, where he admitted to the victim and the victim's mother that he was perpetrating sexual activity against the 12-year-old that was inside that house. He was arrested, he pled out, he's currently doing 12 years in state prison. This gentleman's name is Infinite Barry. He was stopped on the 1800 block of 4th Avenue. He had about 20 bags of heroin on him, and 20 bags, individual bags of heroin with fentanyl inside. One of the things that our investigators are very good at is arresting this guy and then working up to the big guy. So within 2 weeks after arresting Infinite Barry, we got enough information of the players that were surrounding him to make an arrest in Albany, which produced 1,480 bags of heroin and a quantity of crack cocaine, as well as 2 functioning firearms that were in that individual's household. In January 2018, one of our patrol officers witnessed an unoccupied vehicle in the area of a closed business. He made contact with the individual, tried to find out why he was there. Inside that vehicle was a large amount of cocaine, ecstasy powder, 44 Xanax pills, quantity of marijuana, and $3,000 cash. We arrested the 3 males, and one of the males cooperated with us, and we got to another guy that lived in Schenectady County that actually led to us getting a high dollar seizure through asset forfeiture that we're awaiting payment on. So we work our small guys up to our big guys to try to get the most out of it and get the most drugs off the street. A couple vehicle pursuits. 2 males were arrested, one of whom was on parole. This was a traffic stop that started around 19th Street and 3rd Avenue. It ended up behind Grace Fellowship up in Latham, in the wooded area directly behind that. About 60 to 70% of the time you catch the car, but you don't catch the guys. Our guys are very good at catching the guys, and I think that has a lot to do with the youth that are in our department. But they caught both guys within close proximity of their vehicle, which is usually unheard of. We usually set up a perimeter, bring a dog in, and then try to catch them that way. These guys actually caught them after a brief foot pursuit. The second one in July of 2018, we had a male who we stopped in front of Parker Brothers on Broadway for a DWI. He actually left the scene and led us on a pursuit up 155 when Shaker was actually doing all of their renovations there, and drove through one of the new fields with his vehicle through Shaker High. We caught him after a brief foot pursuit. We did have one officer that was injured during that, but he was only out a couple days and came back like a champ. Yeah, this one is the one I'm sure you're all familiar with. This is a vehicle pursuit that started in the city of Troy that came through Watervliet and ended up at Fenimore Trace Apartments, where we had two gentlemen that had kind of barricaded themselves in the second floor apartment. One of the subjects that was involved in this chase is very well known to us. Both subjects were arrested that day, and they were charged by Troy PD. And a short time later, the one individual known to us was arrested. About 2 months later, he was arrested for a homicide that was perpetrated in the city of Albany. This is a father and son duo that were dealing drugs in our city, and this solely came from tips from people in the neighborhood. And I think one of the things that we've done from a community standpoint is we've made it very comfortable for the community to talk back to us, either through our social media or through the networking that we do in the community. And we actually started this case based on neighbors' tips of what was going on. This is in the area of 24th Street, right around Railroad Avenue. This is a father and son that we knew were dealing drugs. The son on the right here is actually a probationer out of Florida. He was on probation. We had information that there was a lot of traffic in front of the house, so we actually have confidential informants that we employ, and they go out and they try to buy drugs from these people. And we have sophisticated surveillance equipment, so we can use that for cases as they come forward. But we identified both of them. They were both arrested, and the father got out. He was in court about 6 months ago, and he was released on time served. And since he was released, we have gotten 2 more buys into him, and he's been arrested again for selling drugs. Not in the city of Watervliet, but in Cohoes. In their house was a .45 caliber handgun that was loaded, and a sawed-off shotgun, as well as a quantity of heroin and cocaine. This is a parolee that was released in the beginning of the summer, in July. He lived in the area of 25th Street and around 10th Avenue. I'm sorry, around 9th Avenue. And we knew that he wasn't going to be able to stay clean for too long. We actually had information that he was perpetrating burglaries in the area of 25th Street, so we have a couple undercover cars that we followed him around with. And one day, one of our investigators saw him walking by Ted's Fish Fry with the proceeds of a burglary that he had just committed. He was walking down 5th Street with a 36-inch screen, LCD screen underneath his arm. So we stopped him. He went for 3 burglaries in the South End. All the property was on him, so after a short time we get to return the property back, and he is currently back in state prison awaiting sentencing on his parole violation. The wet band, right? And this is actually a pursuit that we had, that Troy had. Let me back up a little bit. We had a stolen car in the city of Watervliet. We call out the plate number of the car. Troy picks it up. Troy says, "We're following your car." He goes over to the 378 bridge to come back into Manans. Troy loses it. It's right around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There's too much traffic. They can't keep up with him. One of our officers goes down to the area of 1st Street, the southernmost part of our city, and sees the vehicle again. Both occupants jump out of the vehicle. This subject was caught right away, but he had a partner. And some of you may have seen this on the news. We actually used Colony has a drone that has thermal imaging on it. And they were able to see where that guy was. He was right behind the FedEx plant in Manans. They were able to see him, locate him, and they directed us exactly to his location where he surrendered and he was subsequently arrested. So this is the kind of activity that we deal with. I don't want to say on a daily basis because we don't deal with it daily, but some of the seriousness that we deal with, yet we still find the time to enforce traffic safety with the number of tickets that we write, obviously the number of arrests that we have, and the amount of training that we do. So our guys are paid well, but they work hard for the money, and we get the most out of them. So that's it for me. I'm certainly willing to ask any questions if anybody has any questions.
Chief, in one of your graphics up there, two in a row actually had the tickets and then the arrests, and both seemed to be very high in October. Was there anything specific in October that happened that caused a spike, or that you recognized? Or?
Coincidentally, we had an active drug investigation and an active prostitution investigation that were taking place on at the same time. The drug investigation netted 5 arrests, and the prostitution investigation netted 5 arrests, which shows the blip in our numbers for that particular month.
Thank you.
Both of which occurred on Halloween, October 31st. So,
I do remember.
like we didn't have anything else to do.
Chief, any kind of grants out there for any of the trainings that you do?
There's not a lot of grants for training, but what we've been able to do is create a relationship with the Watervliet Arsenal Police Department, who holds a lot of training in their facility, which allows us to go there, travel a short distance, which enables us to do a lot of training while guys are working rather than having to pay overtime for the training. So we kind of get, our bang for the buck as it comes to that. And the Watervliet Arsenal also has a Milo trainer. And what a Milo is it's a computer screen that they play a scenario on, and you're given an electronic weapon, and you run the scenario out, and there's shoot, don't shoot. You can also do target training and things like that. The relationship that we created with Watervliet Arsenal has been invaluable to us, just based on the facilities that they allow us to use on a daily basis.
What about the quality of life thing that we used to have a couple times? We had it, a couple times a year, I think. Is that something that you still do, or?
We do. The last couple of years, we've had a real shortage with manpower, so our focus was just getting enough guys to work the shift, much less try to bring extra guys in. But we tried to, a couple times during the summer, use some of our GTSC money, which is the Governor's Traffic Safety Commission, and use that to do zero tolerance nights, which means that, we do mandatory arrests for, DWI, we do stop and frisk, we put everybody out on the street at the same time. You probably see at some point in time, one guy has a car stop, but there's 2 other cars behind them. A lot of activity that night, and the guys love doing it, because usually we run a plain clothes detail, and they don't get to dress in plain clothes too much. They're always in a uniform, walking in like we're ready to invade Poland. So, they take advantage of the plain clothes stuff, and it's very productive for us, not only from a traffic safety position, but from a quality of life issue.
Are you going to do that this year?
Yeah, we're going to do it summer. Yep.
Can you give like a rough statistic as far as how many of these people that are arrested with drugs and stuff like that are bringing drugs in versus how many are from Watervliet? Is it more people bringing it in, or is it just people that live here that
No, I'd say it's about 50-50, but the data's kind of skewed from the aspect that we have a good relationship with the DEA. So we'll work a case here in Watervliet, but we'll get a guy in Colony that was supplying that Watervliet guy. So we'll actually have that guy come in and make a delivery in the city of Watervliet. So it looks like our arrest, but we actually kind of pulled them in, so that skews the data a little bit. But I would say it's 50-50. I would say the higher volume is outside the city, but the dime bag dealers are still around.
Thank you.
Might be a good time to mention about the heroin forum that we have on next week.
Oh, Sheriff Apples?
Sheriff Apples.
Yeah. What's the date on that?
12th.
The 12th?
The 12th.
Yeah, so on March 12th, Sheriff Apple is conducting his second heroin forum. It's going to be up at the Watervliet High School. And it's very informative. He brings people in to talk about, the disease of drug abuse and what it's doing. The heroin is bad enough, but the fentanyl issue is out of control. And that's the deadly part of, the heroin epidemic, the additive that they put in there to make the drug go farther. And, Sheriff Apple does a great job hitting on those certain aspects and bringing people in to have real life experience when it comes to those drugs.
And Chief, what's the best way you think when people suspect something to report it?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I get a lot of emails or phone calls or texts from either Councilman McGrowdy or Councilman Patricelli, but I think we've done as much as we can to kind of open things up to the community. And I'm not saying don't tell them if you have an issue, but tell me too, because when I get it from Frank or from Charles, it kind of gets watered down by the time it gets to me. And I can't get the I guess the inflection of what's going on unless I get it firsthand. And there's going to be questions that I want to ask you guys that now I have to ask them, and then they have to ask you, and it just waters it down. So listen, my email's mspain@watervliet.com. It can't get any simpler. My phone on my desk is 270-3819. We have a Facebook that you can send a message at any time. We have a Twitter that you can send a message at any time. So there's no reason why anybody shouldn't be calling me telling me there's an issue. If you've got a problem and it's small, I'll let you know that it's small, and if we don't have time right away to take care of it, I'll let you know when we're going to get to it. But I've never told anybody no, and a lot of that information that we get from the community, as you can see, is very beneficial and very productive for us. So I will never not take on an investigation based on, whether I think it's too small or not. And listen, I got people that send me messages saying this car's been parked in front of my house for, 5 days, and we have a cop up there in 5-10 minutes. So if that's the kind of response that you get for something that's that small, imagine the response you're going to get for the big stuff. Yes?
Chief, I talked to you about a month ago about the sneakers hanging up on the wires.
Yeah.
And I also talked to somebody else on the council, and I talked to 2 other gentlemen 2 weeks ago about it. They're still hanging there, and I know it's drug related. Last year you did a phenomenal job of giving us all the sneakers, which indicate where the drugs are in the city. We still have them there on 16th Street, going down and forth.
So I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay?
I'll take the credit for getting the sneakers removed, but I had absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't know if it was National Grid that came through and cut all the sneakers down.
I think Hank did it. I think he did it.
Somebody took them all down last year. There were quite a few that were taken down.
But anyway,
Starting again this year.
The sneaker thing used to be an issue as to where drugs were available. That's where you can buy drugs. We found that that's no longer consistent with that kind of activity. More or less, it's people that have seen it before that go ahead and do it, but it's not necessarily indicative to drug activity that's taking place there. It's that, in conjunction with a lot of high traffic in that area, people coming in and out of houses, then that's more conducive for us to start an investigation for drug activity.
It's not that far from 18th Street, and you think it's straight down the street. And you said you had a big arrest on 4th Avenue down there?
Yeah.
And 18th?
Yeah.
And that's just 16th Street is the next street up?
Yeah, I just think it was coincidental. Obviously, that arrest took place a long time
As I
ago.
said, when I'm out walking with the kids in the
Yeah.
spot.
Listen, I agree with you.
I have to,
Yeah.
give them a reason why are the sneakers up there.
It's the broken window theory, right? If that starts to decline, then everything starts to decline around it. But I think, we're good enough and pay enough attention to, cars that are going by that we're not familiar with, small V&T violations that lead us into the car that we get big drug arrests out of. A lot of that's where we kind of cut our teeth.
I was just thinking of the kids, actually.
No, absolutely, I agree with you.
That's where my thoughts are going.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Not the big people.
My ability to take those sneakers down is
I
limited,
know, but at least maybe you got to show them.
Yeah, I can't even get them to replace streetlights anymore. Thank you very much.
So at the next meeting, we'll have the 4th of our 7 departmental recaps, and that will be the Water Department, and Supervisor David Dressel will be presenting that. I just had one more thing that I wanted to mention tonight, Mayor, and that's over the last few meetings, a lot of our legislation has to do with grants. Tonight as well, the 2 pieces of legislation that are on the agenda have to do with grants, so there's been a lot of questions of, with all this legislation for grants, how many grants do we have and things of that nature. So I know in May, our last of our departmental reviews will be done by David Wheatley, who's the head of our planning department and handles the majority of grants, but I wanted to give some quick statistics just to keep everybody informed as to where we are. Currently, right now, we have received, awarded, and are administering 18 grants within the city of Watervliet. And those grants that we are administering total awards of $6.6 million. So to put that in perspective, our general fund is a $12 million budget. And right now, we're administering $6 million worth of grants, so that's a very significant number compared to what our budget is. So once again, tonight's legislation will have 2 more on there. Some of them are for grants that we apply for, some are for seeing through grants, but just wanted to give everybody perspective as you keep hearing these legislation for grants, how important it is to the city to have these grants, administer them, and the amount of money that comes with those grants. So, and that is all that I have for this evening.
Great. That was old business. No, that was your report. Now we're to old business.
We have nothing open business.
New business.
In new business, we have resolution number 9593. Council of the City of Watervliet hereby approves, authorizes, and directs Mayor Michael P. Manning to execute a contract to purchase 2112 4th Avenue in Watervliet from the Albany County Land Bank pursuant to the New York State Home Local Program in the amount of $4,151.10.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we move on the resolution.
I second that. Discussion?
Yeah, so the information regarding this grant has been communicated to the council by David Wheatley. But the summation of this grant, basically it is a purchase of a land bank owned property for the amount that Scott had just read, $4,151.10. That is covered by the grant, so it's not city funds that will be used to purchase this home. The home program then allows for us to go out to bid to rehab the property and put it back on the rolls and get it livable and again, get it back up to the standards that it needs to be livable. So it's just another great way for us to take a vacant property off of our vacant property registry, rehab it, and basically put it out for sale to low and moderate income to fill the home. So this is the grant award and authorizing the purchase from the grant.
The profits from this property goes where?
It goes back into the grant cycle with the home program. We do not profit from the sale of homes.
What's the timeline
For getting it done?
yeah, from beginning to end.
Well, I can tell you that the timeline's already been extended greatly because this has been a long, drawn-out process. You know.
But from beginning to now.
Jordan deserves a lot of credit, having to deal with the county, the land bank, the home program, putting these contracts together. It's the amount of emails that go back and forth to get this done. It's tremendous. But from this point, we do have engineers that will oversee the project. So we did previously go out to procure the engineers for it. Now that it has changed a little bit, it was 2 properties, now it's 1. So we just have to reissue that. The inspection will take place next week, I believe. So it's within 10 days. And then the spec can be put together. Then we have to go out to bid. Once the contractors come in, we can the lowest bid we can accept, and then they can start the project. It'd be tough to give a timeline because we don't know the extent of the work that has to be done until the spec is put together. It'll be accomplished in this year, and the expectation is it should be done by the end of the summer. But again, it all depends on how the extent of the work.
Yeah, just a slight modification. Through speaking with Dave Wheatley and also Ann Peterson from the home program, the city will expend the necessary funds up front to purchase the property, and then the home funds will be used to reimburse the city for the purchase price of the property and also for the cost of the rehabilitation of the home. Just a slight modification from what Chairman indicated. Thank you. But we have a contract, if it's approved, ready to execute, and the time frame for the closing would be the end of March. And then Dave obviously is familiar with all of the responsibilities or the understandings that the city is required to undertake in order to rehabilitate this home. So time frame, I think specifically, I don't know specifically,
Yeah.
but I know Dave.
Well, 6 to 9 or 9 months is pretty good.
Okay, call the roll.
Councilman Patricelli?
In favor.
Councilman McGratty?
In favor.
Mayor Manning?
In favor.
Next, we have resolution number 9594. Council of the City of Watervliet hereby approves the grant disbursement agreement between the City of Watervliet and the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, and further ratifies and confirms the mayor's execution of said grant disbursement agreement.
I'd like to make a motion to accept resolution number 9594 as written.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
And so it's been about a year since we last discussed this, but this is the grant that we received from John McDonald to purchase a ladder truck for the fire department when our ladder truck was out of commission due to the damage from the fire on Remsen Street in Cohoes. These DASNY grants, if you've ever been a part of them, they take a long time to get through the paperwork. So it's taken about a year for the state to process the paperwork. We received this in February, have processed all the paperwork. It's ready to go, and so this is the authorization for the mayor to accept the grant and sign it so that we can put back in for the disbursement, which will reimburse us for the purchase of the truck and equipping the truck.
Okay.
Scott, call the roll.
Councilman Petroselli.
In favor.
Councilman McGrady.
In favor.
Mayor Manning.
In favor.
And Mr. Mayor, that's all we have in new business this evening.
Okay, appropriations accounting?
Nothing appropriated now.
I do have an announcement though, Mayor, since we're talking appropriations and accounting. I just wanted to give a quick update, FRB update, because I know it's been a while since we've had an update on that. The FRB is the Fiscal Restructuring Board of New York State. It's an offshoot of the Division of Budget. The council applied to the FRB for assistance and some possible restructuring to help keep expenses down in the future. And it's been a very long process, logging a lot of hours. The gentleman that we were originally working with on that had left the state to go to another job. Now we're dealing with a different individual, so it's been a lot of reiterating the facts and the information back to them. We had previously been told that we would receive the report in March, but the Fiscal Restructuring Board is not meeting until May, so it's going to be until May before we receive a report. And the main reason behind that is, it's like I said, it's an offshoot of the Division of Budget. And if you know how the state budget works, it's an April 1 budget, so you hear a lot in the news going on now with the state budget. So the people that work for FRB and the Division of Budget are working on the state budget right now and kind of put us on the back burner for now. We're one of 5 communities that is working with the FRB for this, so we do expect to hear back from them in May with the report and hopefully some sort of draft report before that so that the council can see where it's headed. But just wanted to give an update because I know we haven't really talked about it much in the past few months, but that's where it's at.
We'll be able to see a draft report and have a conversation with them.
I believe so. I believe we'll be able to have a draft report. I'll talk to them and see what the communication is between now and then. Yep.
Thank you, Jeremy.
That was it for appropriation.
That brings us to public comment period. Oh, prior to that, anything else up here?
Well, I have a couple things, but I noticed that Janice Myers here. And Janice, I'd like to say thank you for all the help you gave to the residents that I sent your way and everybody else for the STAR program. That was great, and thank you. I mean, I got calls back that said that you were great, so appreciate it. Thanks.
True.
Just a couple of things. I had a call today that there's a volunteer group from actually it's Channel 10 who's willing to come in again in June. They had a little mix-up last year, but they asked if we have a project that we wanted to have them do. They're going to have a crew, and we just got to know somewhere about May, when that's going to be, all right, or what that would be. All right.
They're going to be coming in May?
No, June, but end of April, sometime in May, they want to do it. Probably, I probably know we probably got a lot of work we can do at the Dome, but that's one spot. Speaking of the Dome, I want to thank Mr. Keeb here for donating the water fountain at the Dome. It was installed the other day, and I appreciate it. Bill Conroy and I and Jimmy Chartrand finished it up, and it's actually working, I believe. Is it?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so we have a usable water fountain at the Dome. Also, I want to speak to you later. I have a lead on a possible grant for the paving of the 7th Street Court.
Okay.
Chief, I wanted to ask you a question. The 19th Street Hill. We seem to have a nice 30-mile-an-hour problem there, where we catch a lot of vehicles on there. One of the consistent complaints I've had was that there's no signs there. Is it possible we install another sign somewhere, like, in that hill section? Because there's really nothing from the bottom of the hill all the way up until the top.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I'll check it out.
Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a sign that indicates that the speed increases.
Coming down, but not going up.
Yeah, there is.
Is there?
Yeah. Yeah, just prior to Wiswall.
Just prior to Wiswall? Okay, well.
But I'll check it tomorrow. I'll
We'll,
just verify.
we'll see. I mean, maybe, obviously, it seems to be another two-lane highway. It seems a lot faster than. Did notice that the rusty anchor is going to be scrapped, I guess, like that. Is there anything that we can do as a city? I haven't talked to him, but I don't know if you know him, but in the sense of the LDC or anything like that, that they may be able to help with this?
It's beyond repair, so.
Is it at the end?
But he would like to build something in the park on land. That's his vision, to prevent future sinkings, I guess.
That would work.
It would make it year-round.
That would make it year-round, and he would use the dock, he would use the area that was allotted for the barge itself and the docks to be just docks. He believes his permitting allows him to do that, so. It just happened, so he'd like to float some ideas by us.
Float? Somebody? Very good.
Everybody got it.
All right.
If you need, I can throw you a life saver. Okay, that's enough of that. You're good?
I'm good. I know there's probably going to be discussions here on the garbage or bike path, so I'll leave that up to them, and then we can go from there.
Cool. Good? Good. All right. Good. Scott, let's open that up.
All right, at this time, the council has authorized the public comment period. If you wish to address the council, you must step forward, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 2 minutes to address the council on any matters you wish. At the end of your comment, the council may reply or choose to reply at a later date, if they so choose.
Jeff Foster, 1201 8th Ave, Watervliet. About the garbage fines. I got, so far, $300 worth of them this week. The fines, I don't have the problem with the fines. I don't have a problem with the garbage not being in the can, getting a fine for that, which were 2 of them. One of them was for no lids. I filed a police report today, hoping I could pick it up. Someone must have stole my lids, because I've never bought a garbage can without a lid before, and I've bought a lot of garbage cans. The problem with the lid is, if most people work, which most people do, you get home at 5 o'clock, the lid is gone, especially on a windy day. The lid would be gone. If not, it would be run over, crushed, and there'd be nothing left to it if it was a street or an alley or somewhere where there's traffic going down. So I'm not really in agreement with the lid law as long as the garbage is in there. I know a lot of people, a lot of the residents, they take their lid off and put their garbage out because you got a 50-50 shot of the lid coming back. The other thing is I don't understand why that is in the law, because there's no lids on recycle bins. And on the recycle bins, there's papers, bottles, everything else in there that could blow out. So if there's no lid law with the recycle bin, why do we have it with the garbage can? Just something that I think really needs to be addressed, especially, with what's going on with the garbage now. What should I say?
Jeff cover it all, or?
I don't know, maybe.
Saki Chaudhary, 1856 12th Ave, Watervliet, 12189. I was here a couple meetings ago regarding a vacant fee, and they are billing for the water and sewer use, and at the same time they're charging vacant fee. That's my concern. I was told they're gonna check back, and according to what Jordan read, I'm entitled to money, but that's not what the building department says.
So I believe the code reads that if you pay the vacant building fee, you can get it back once you have the house occupied. And so I believe the discrepancy is with yours is that the house is sold rather than occupied, so it's sold to someone else, so that's not how the law reads currently.
But the law also doesn't says occupied, it doesn't says by homeowner or by me or by you, it says occupied. The person who's buying a house is occupying that house. If I rent to somebody or I sell to somebody, the house is occupied. Or what difference it makes if I'm paying it? I mean, all the cities give money to the new homeowners. But in this city, they should pay a fee because their house was on a vacant list. And if it's occupied, the city does not define it, occupied by the owner or the flipper or the contractor. There's homes in the city that everybody sells. The new homes that are built, they're occupied by the next person. The city's priority is either occupying the properties or get the properties that are vacant, abandoned, on the vacant list to back in the tax recycle roll. And that's what I'm doing, but I'm paying the fee to do that. City is getting a grant to do a house on 4th Ave where they're going to sell just to get the house back on track. While I'm doing the same thing without a dime from the city, but I'm paying for the city to do that. That's my concern. If the city property is considered vacant, it's determined by the building department, there's nobody living in it, but they're still billing for the water and sewer.
Correct.
I checked with the title company that why don't they check with the building department? They said that we are to check with the finance if there's anything open. We don't go with each department and ask them, if you have any grass cut fee here or any vacant fee.
2 minutes.
Sorry, my 2 minutes.
So just to answer on the water and sewer, that was long talked about and a few public hearings on the water and sewer, and the council made a decision on the water and sewer for vacant properties, and so there is still a fee for water and sewer even if it is still vacant, whether it's being used or not. So the council did approve that, so those fees, if they're not paid, they are re-levied onto the taxes, which has been the
But
concern. So that's
those minutes on the council meeting to proving that is if you have a multi-family house, one unit's not rented, vacant for a month or two, there's no credit given for that. But on this end, you are charging $1,500 a vacant fee and $600 water bill. That's not on the other units. Where I have 4 units, 1 unit's not rented, I don't have a problem paying that water bill. I'm not looking to get a credit for that. In this particular case is where the city is billing the same thing for something that city is not providing.
So the law is clear how it's stated, and so that's how it's enforced.
Can I ask a question, just a clarification? What's happened here is that he rehabbed the house.
Correct.
If he rehabbed the house and moved in, he would have gotten the vacant fee back?
If it was paid, yes.
If it was paid?
Correct.
So, what do you mean what was paid? The vacant fee?
Yeah, so the vacant building fee was not paid, it was re-levied onto the taxes and then covered through the taxes. So it was not paid when it was.
So it had to be paid and not,
So when it's re-levied in the taxes, is that still paid?
Then the taxes are paid.
But re-levied
or
is in the
just
taxes.
It
removed off
becomes
the
part
bill?
of your taxes.
But it is still a re-levy that's getting paid.
To the county.
You're not giving money to the charity, but it's still being paid to the city in the re-levy also. But it's not that it's gone to anywhere else here. The re-levy is in taxes are paid, so it's still paid.
Correct, yes, the money comes in.
So money comes in.
Yeah.
So if it comes in, then it still goes out.
But he's saying also that because he sold the property and somebody else moved in, he's not eligible for it?
By the letter of the law, no.
By the letter?
By what it says in the code, no. If you sell the property, you do not get it back. It does not say
That's
if you sell
not
it.
what, but I have paid it.
What's happening?
No, as far as the vacant building charges, they were, but now they're gonna collect as we go. They'll pay us as they get paid, basically.
I had
That's
asked,
a change in this last year.
I had asked them if the county did pay that back to us. In the past they had, but now they're not until they did.
Starting this year.
So in the case that this wasn't paid to us, it was re-levied to the county isn't paying us for it until they get it.
So once the county gets it, When I go to sell the property, the county gets it, city gets their money.
The county will get it, that closing you're saying, because you'll have to pay the back.
You have to pay it. So
Gotcha.
then it comes back to the city.
Right.
The only difference is becoming is, if it's paid by this homeowner, that is a seller,
Yeah.
the money goes to the seller.
So-
Because the city's looking to get this house back on the track.
So right now, the code doesn't address what happens
If it's sold.
if it's sold, which, okay. Well,
But
that's,
in the beginning of this code was if you list that house for sale, they'll give you the money back. It doesn't only says occupied, it doesn't say owner occupied either, it says occupied. So before I sell the next house, I should rent for a month and go that way.
Get it back.
Or change our law.
let's take a look at the wordage and straighten this out. I mean, the intent is to get someone in it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's doing
I think
it.
he-
Somebody,
I think he
somebody, doesn't have me personally.
Right,
No, we don't like doing it.
But his intent is to fix the property to sell it to.
and I think he met that intent.
So let us look at that
And the lids.
and the lids. We might link them together.
I'm okay.
Okay. Thanks for reminding us about that. So we have to fix that, so that the intent of the law,
Originally, everybody said you'll get it back. If you list the house for sale within 6 months,
it was an incentive to get moving on the property.
that's instead of
And
costing
rehabbing
me,
and selling it is,
that is costing me $10,000 every year.
it's moving, all right. Okay. Get the message. Okay? Who's after Sakiba?
Paul Hughes, 108 15th Street. I got 3 questions, and they're just on statuses on buildings. The status on the church that's down on the end of First Avenue, I noticed that it's vacant, and I'm just wondering if anybody's maintaining it. The status on the church that's right here, that's owned by the city, I noticed that they were working on it. I just was wondering how they were making out with the heat. And the other one is the status on the house on First Avenue. It's about halfway down. During the summer, we talked about it. It's a vacant house that it goes back and forth between the bank, and you guys have to contact them about maintaining the house. Right now, the concrete steps that are in front of it have huge holes in them. They came through, they cleaned up the yard, they boarded up some windows, they fixed this and that, but those concrete steps have a hole in them like that big that you can see all the way down to the cellar. I think that they should be contacted and asked to either board them up or rope them off or take them out of there so you can't get in the house, but somebody's gonna get hurt. And that's it, thank you.
The church on First Avenue, I'll do a little bit more research and see where that's at. The house on First Ave, I'll talk to the building department. It looks like the whole department's here tonight, so I think they.
I don't. It's the one that posted first.
Right across the street from you.
The fourth one down on the right. But it's a 3-story brick house.
And then as far as the Dutch Reformed Church over here, the former Dutch Reformed Church, we have begun the work on that. The first step in the work is the clean out. A lot of junk in the basement that had to be cleared out. And there's still some more clear out in the bell tower. A lot of gross cleaning that has to be done in there. That's going to take place next week. We can't move forward yet on any rehab of the building because the electrical has to be upgraded coming into the building because it's so old it needs to be upgraded coming in. So we'll have that done first while we're doing the cleaning portion of it. Then once that's done, then we can start the city's portion of the rehab that's going to happen in there. And the engineer is putting together the as-built and the spec for the bid spec for it. So we started the cleaning work and progressing as we move forward with that. So.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
I didn't know if I had asked before when you guys were gonna take and redo that, if they would have somebody inspect it, because all the eaves are wooden, and they're all leaking, and there's squirrels coming in and out of them. I know they're bad.
Yeah,
But if you go from, stand by my house and look up at the
yes.
the steeple looks like it's ready to fall on the church.
Yep.
And I just didn't know if they had inspected that part of it at all.
Yeah, that's the engineer's first task is the outside, and then he's going to the inside. So next week he's doing the outside, and the week after he's doing the inside, after they're done cleaning the inside.
Thank you.
Yep.
Christina Conti, 1819 6th, second floor. I'm here on behalf of myself and my landlord. I totally agree with the garbage cans, needing lids, stuff like that. Where I have my problem is I've witnessed on several occasions, including yesterday, where the garbage men throw the garbage cans. So when the notice came about that we had to have lids on all the cans, I notified the landlord. He brought 3 brand new cans. Yesterday I was outside. The one gentleman threw the can, busted it, the wheel right off, and I politely said to him, "Can you please not throw the cans?" I said, "because we have to pay for those." I said, "Not only do we have to pay for them, we get fined." And he said, "Don't worry, I'll finesse the other cans for you," and then gently put the other 2 down. But I had already broke the one. We have reported this several times. My landlord has even emailed. That's my only complaint. I have no problem complying to city rules, but there's no reason why they have to be rude, and there's no reason why they need to throw the cans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Cheryl Gordon, 2102 Broadway, Watervliet. I'm here about the bike path. Is there a reason why we can't have the bike path go up to 20th Street, right, and down the alley, which is considered Front Street? That alley goes all the way after the people would clean their garbage out there, goes all the way to the crosswalk of the 787. I went down and literally walked with my grandkids today to take pictures. I knew this alley, I've lived there 63 years. I knew this alley went all the way. People come behind my house, wall hours, walk that way to get over to the 787 to avoid 23rd Street. It's very hard to get around there. My thing is, everybody thinks it's great that the path is going to be there. We already have a lot of accidents on that street. You narrow that street. I almost saw a bus get collided today with a big tractor trailer because there's no room. You put a bike path there, people are going to get seriously hurt. People are going to hit cars that are parked across the street. And then you're taking away parking. And you say, Jeremy, that parking has been illegal on Broadway. I've lived there 63 years. We had a baseball field. Never have there been an issue with being told there was illegal parking on the east side of the street. I read the thing, it says up to 19th Street. That's what it says in your thing. From 19th to 23rd Street, doesn't say anything about parking. What's going to happen is, and heaven forbid, that my kids come to visit who don't park on the sidewalk, they have to cross with my grandchildren if something happens. Correct?
2 minutes.
Okay, but I just want to let you know that this alleyway, it would save a lot of construction on Broadway. It goes right to the crosswalk for letting people clean out their garbage back there. Thank you.
Cheryl, did you Cheryl, when we were talking about that, did you say it went to 18th Street?
From 20th Street all the way to 23rd Street.
Right.
If you,
So right behind Francis's Auto.
right,
Right.
well, behind there, I have pictures,
Yeah.
behind there, there's a bunch of garbage. Now, that alley used to be all clear. Now, there's a bunch of wood and everything else back there. And that's how people are getting through, is they push back the stuff and walk through. So, I mean,
We talked about that.
I'll have to look at it again.
if you look up
There's
there,
not enough room there, and
that's the 20th
it's
Street.
on the DOT right away, so we'll look at it again.
We have a garbage truck once a week.
Yeah, but not that goes all the way behind it to, through Francis Auto and 23rd Street.
No, because you got the house block and then it goes around the back of those houses. But
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
No. I'm not in charge there.
Anyone else want to talk?
I have one more question.
Yeah, we just keep on getting shorter today, don't we? Danielle Woodruff, 1207 Hillside Drive. This isn't, I don't have any questions or anything like that, but there's been a lot of hubbub about crows on the Facebook recently. So this is more of me just laying a foundation. I kind of noticed that we as residents don't really know much about our residential crow communities and roofs that have moved in. So this is me just throwing some stuff out there. Last night, between last night and today, I contacted someone who wrote a really great blog on crows that I actually read up on when I first noticed there was a big roost that moved in across the street from me, my house. I live right across from the high school, and anyone who lives here knows there's a ton of crows over there. The lady who wrote that blog is actually Dr. Jennifer Campbell-Smith. She's the Biological Sciences Fellow at Binghamton University. And she put me in contact with Kevin McGowan, who's head of the ornithological department at Cornell University, who put me in contact with Margaret Brittingham, who's a wildlife resources expert at Penn State. She actually made the very successful crow relocation program at Penn State. They had a roost of over 100,000 crows. They gave me some information that I thought would really help us kind of understand what's going on. So the roost that's in the capital region is actually over 100 years old. And I know Charles mentioned that we were thinking about a crow disbursement program. And the thing about crow disbursement programs is that you never actually break up a roost. We use crow cannons, use the lasers, but all it does, if you have a population of like 100,000 crows, what happens is they just break off into segments of 40,000 or 10,000, but they all stay within a radius. And if you look at the history of the capital region, they're just migrating from one city to another. I believe that the one that's in Watervliet now came here from Cohoes, if I remember correctly. They had a disbursement program and boom, we got crows. Also, as a lot of people noted, they're very smart. They live in communities, they take care of their young, they support their elderly, they live in families. They're also really good at finding food. So they know if lids on garbage cans, etc. They know everyone who doesn't have them, and then they go eat. They're not going to spend time taking the lids off because they're scavengers. They don't want to do the work like that. They find it, and then they eat it. Also, the last and most important thing for this season is that crows are migratory. And the Watervliet population of crows that we have here are made up of two different species of corvids. One are actually residential crows, which are a small group, probably under 10,000 for a roost, that are here year-round. They're usually in small families. And then the rest of the population are actually Canadian crows. They come down from Canada and they roost here from October till the end of March. So for me, the big thing is if we're going to spend money on a program right now, it's kind of, jumping the gun because they're going to be gone anyway, and that would be a waste of time and resources on the city's part. So for me, throwing in my 2 cents as a resident, my suggestion would be to do nothing because they're going to be gone soon. Two, use the experts and resources that we have. All three of these experts on crows that have done research for years for this very problem, because they started swarming in the 90s into residential areas in the capital region, and no one's ever been able to get rid of them. They have offered their time and their resources and their research to help us solve this problem. And also, I think it'd be pretty cool if Watervliet was the first city in the capital region to actually address a sustainable solution to this problem instead of just shooting off some cannons and sending them over to Latham. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, anyone else? And crows?
Huh? Nobody else getting out? Good?
Okay, we'll close the public comment period, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second that.
Mayor Manning?
Favor?
Councilor Petroselli?
In favor.
Councilor McCrowdy?
Dean?